two men stood in what looked like a deserted wasteland made out of dozens of different colors. Well, technically, only one of the men was standing, the other was floating in the air above. The man that was floating was wearing an eye patch over his right eye, had chin-long silver hair, wore an odd black outfit and was also smoking a pipe. The man standing on the ground was wearing a red checkered coat with a large pocket watch sticking out of the bottom pocket, brown pants and round glasses. His pure white hair went just below his chin, but the odd thing about him were the long, rabbit ears that stuck out of his head. The rabbit-eared man that stood on the ground was known as Peter White, the Prime Minister of Hart Castle, also known as the White Rabbit. The man floating in the above him was Nightmare, a incubus who could enter, and even control, a person's dream if he wished to do so. He also ruled over the dream realm, and that is where the two men were now, inside the dream realm. I do not think this is a good idea. White Rabbit, Nightmare informed as he stared down at Rabbit-eared with his one, uncovered, silver eye. The rabbit responded with a glare, his cold, wine-colored eyes piercing daggers worse than the bullets from his gun. I understand the danger of the request, but I do not give a crap. After all, this is purely for Alice. Nothing more, the man replied coldly. Despite the coldness from the man below him, the incubus found a grin taking over his face and he chuckled softly in response. Oh yes, the outsider Alice Liddell, whom everyone had grown to love. Thankfully, much to everyone's relief, the girl had decided to stay in Wonderland rather than return home. Unfortunately, a few people knew that a part of Alice still wished she could return home to her sister. Nightmare knew this from witnessing the dreams she'd have of her older sister. It was sad that Alice couldn't remember the truth about Lorena, but it was also for the best. Peter White, the White Rabbit, was the most pleased about Alice's decision to stay. Despite his constant jealousy and hatred of other men being around Alice, he wanted her to be happy no matter what, even if she wasn't with him. If she was happy, then he was happy. Which is what he had told himself, and even some others, many times before. Unfortunately, Alice wasn't really happy, and Peter, along with a few others, had taken notice to this. Even though Alice had claimed that she was getting used to Wonderland, there was still many things that boggled her mind and bothered her. The reckless killing was one of the worst things that bothered her. Sadly, too many people were convinced it wouldn't make a difference because of replacements to change. Thankfully though, Alice had been able to convince Boris to be less reckless after telling him that, even if he could be reborn, he would not be himself anymore. Other things such as roles or the treatment of the faceless, and even simple things that made no common sense, bothered her. Alice needs a friend who can relate to her. Her way of thinking is different and confusing to us, but it's the same way for our way of thinking to her. If she can have a friend that shares the same option as her, I'm sure Alice will be happy again. Of course, it would have to be a female. I wouldn't tolerate any men around my dear Alice, Peter continued and pushed his glasses further up his face as he did so. Nightmare looked at the rabbit man thoughtfully, considering the statement before grinning. Yes, you are right. Even her dreams have been affected because of this. Although, bringing in another outside can be dangerous, but perhaps very interesting at the same time. He smiled before clapping his hands together. Suddenly, a bright light appeared only a few feet away from Peter, waiting for him to enter the other world. You have 24 hours to find a friend for Alice. I suggest you be careful in who you pick, White Rabbit. Hee after all, this so-called friend might end up being a bigger threat than any one of us here, if that is even possible. Nightmare ended with an amused laugh. Peter nodded towards the warning and finally cracked a friendly enough smile. Haha, just you wait. Because of me, Alice will be happy once again. Perhaps she'll finally proclaim the love she's been hiding from me, he declared dreamily before he ran towards the white light. As he watched him go, Nightmare finally coughed up the blood that had been wanting to come out. Ugh, sometimes I wonder if that man is sicker than I am, he mumbled to himself, wiping the blood from his mouth with his sleeve before disappearing from sight. With the portal between the two worlds now open, the incubus wished he could see the reactions from both Alice and the girl that would no doubt be kidnapped by Peter. Even if he couldn't, he knew that things were likely to get 10 times more interesting.